Questions. Colin, Deputy Derek Leary on behalf of Fianna Fáil.
Good, Can Curler. Published this morning in the Irish Times, the reporting from a letter that the Chief Executive of the Health and Safety Authorities had been forced to write to the Department of Enterprise, Jobs and Innovation in relation to the devastation of the authority and its staff at the accelerated and additional cuts in resources proposed to the authority. Further, in that letter, he has warned that the proposed cuts, and this is a direct quote, will lead to preventable increases in the number of deaths and serious accidents and illnesses in the workplace. In other words, what he's saying is people may die. Not my words, but the words of an authority that's not known for exaggeration or for hyperbole. In 2012, 47 people lost their lives in workplace accidents. To date, in 2013, there have been 6 deaths in the workplaces. 53 lives in total, on average nearly 1 a week. I think we all agree that there are lives that could have been saved and that accidents that should not have happened, and that is why we support the work of the Health and Safety Authority. Yesterday, many of your government colleagues spoke of agonising over the decision in relation to abolishing the various mobility allowances. On this occasion, however, I don't think you need to agonise. You've been put on notice by the government authority charged with protecting the people who work in this country that it is not in a position to fill its role. And it has put you on notice that its inability to fulfil its role will lead to preventable increases in the number of deaths and serious accidents and illnesses in the workplace. It doesn't come as stark as that. So, there's no need to agonise over saving the lives of workers. There's clearly a need to save workers and their families from having to agonise over serious injury or fatal accidents. What is your position in relation to this letter and the cuts that are being approved by the Minister? And do you intend, as Tánaiste and as leader of the Labour Party, to engage with the Health and Safety Authority on this issue?
Ceann Comhairle, well, first of all, we're all keenly aware of the challenges posed by the state's finances, where public expenditure continues to outstrip revenues collected. And in this context, all public sector organisations must continue to deliver improved services in the context of constrained resources. The careful balancing of resources across organisations is an ongoing exercise, and I understand that against this backdrop, the agencies under the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation were recently informed of 2013 staffing targets as part of the ongoing employment control framework. The HSE has had an excellent record in recent years in the context of declining resources, which has been achieved largely through the hard work of its staff and through workplace inspections, and also as a result of the HSE's development of innovative tools, including Be Smart, its online risk assessment tool, its new online licensing portal designed to make compliance easier, simpler and less costly, and the GeoSmart, its inspection management system. Furthermore, awareness campaigns, the involvement of industry organisations and encouraging greater compliance by employers also contributed to achieving strong levels of workplace health and safety levels in Ireland, including a reduction of fatal workplace injuries in 2012. Sectoral changes, including the collapse in employment in the construction sector, has changed the operational landscape in which the HSE works, and the HSE will continue to adapt. Notwithstanding the concerns expressed about its 2013 staffing target and the undoubtable challenges for the HSE, the authority has proved itself to be an adaptable and high-achieving organisation, having met all its ECF targets since 2009. Its recent strategy and its programme of work for 2013 outlines the HSE's commitment to working smarter, for example, the targeting of its resources on higher risk sectors and places of work, concentrating information and legislative programmes on higher risk areas, for example in agriculture, identifying new ways of delivering services, deploying its innovative IT-enabled inspection management tools to support more effective inspections and to make more use of desktop inspection for specialist inspections, for example in chemicals. The Departments of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation will be working with the HSE over the course of 2013 to monitor progress on its targets and to achieve the best use of available staff and resources.
Thank you. Deputy Cleary.
Guarantees in that answer. The Chief Executive of the HSA, and yes, they're doing a very good job, and all of their staff are doing a very good job. The Chief Executive has been forced to write to the Secretary-General of the Department to say that the target proposed is not achievable based on our experience of current processes and mechanisms. So the man who leads up, who we charge to lead up the authority, and who has led up an authority that has done such a good job, is saying he can't do it anymore. He cannot fulfil his role. Secondly, you speak of workplace inspections. Workplace inspections in 2013 will be 30% down on where they were. And there will be further reductions in all of the services, including the work that the HSA does with our high-tech companies in terms of advising them on their processes and advising them on the resources that they use in relation to research and development. So here we have it again. Last Monday we had a big, full glitz, glamour announcement about an R&D programme. And then on Thursday, one of the agencies targeted with assisting that programme has to write to the department to say that it will not be able to assist these companies in doing their job. But more importantly of all, Taoiseach, the authority charged with protecting people in the workplace is saying that because of these proposals, there will be preventable increases in the number of deaths and serious accidents and illness in the workplace. And a cut and paste answer in relation to that specific charge from somebody charged by this House with delivering a function is frankly not good enough. So the Minister, it is clear in the Secretary-General's letter to the HSA that the Minister signed off on those targets which the authority is saying it cannot deliver, and it has outlined the consequences of being unable to deliver. And I ask you, will you take a specific intervention to ensure that the authority will be resourced to deliver? And also, you speak of tight resources, but the authority, in its letter to the Minister, has cited a number of examples, including the House of the Oireachtas, Comreg, Commission for Energy Regulation, that have been given extra posts this year. So we're saying to an organisation charged with protecting workers, you're not getting extra resources. But other organisations with less important remits are given extra resources.
Thank you.
So again, it's a question of choices. So are you going to choose to act on behalf of the health and safety of Irish workers?
Well, can I just say that the government gives very high priority to the issue of safety in the workplace and the issue of health in the workplace. And as I've said, the Health and Safety Authority does a very good job. The employment landscape has changed. The numbers, for example, and the amount of activity in construction, which used to occupy a lot of the attention of the Health and Safety Authority, that has changed. The way in which the Health and Safety Authority is conducting its business, the amount of online activity that it does, for example, that has changed. All of that said, of course, the views of the Chief Executive of the Health and Safety Authority are taken seriously by the government, and I can tell you that no, they're not ignored. The Secretary-General of the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation is due to meet with the Chief Executive Officer of the HSA today to discuss the content of the letter that has been sent. The government does take the issue of safety very seriously. We do take the views that have been expressed by the Chief Executive Officer of the HSA seriously. There is clearly a context in which this has to be discussed. That's the context that we all know of the financial constraints and the changed employment environment. And the Secretary-General of the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation will be meeting with the CEO of the HSA today.
Thank you. Deputy Mary Lou MacDonald.
Taoiseach, on November the 10th last, the people voted to enshrine the rights of the child into the Constitution. And you said at that time that the referendum was an opportunity to state clearly and categorically that we, the Irish people, value children and childhood. Taoiseach said that was the rhetoric. We know that the reality has been very, very different. The reality is that your government, through the Department of Youth and Children, is handing down cuts across the board to youth services across the state and indeed here in this city of Dublin. And be very clear, Taoiseach, that these cuts will bite hard and will target some of the most disadvantaged communities across the state. Take here in the City of Dublin. The City of Dublin Youth Services Board are proposing cuts, some of them of the magnitude of 14% to projects right across the city. So, for instance, the Swan project in North Wall will lose over €62,000. Cabra for Youth will be cut. Ballyfermot Youth Service will lose nearly €74,000, as will the base in Ballyfermot take a huge hit. The Braddock Youth Service in the northwest inner city is facing a massive cut of €65,000. Sphere 17 in Darndale will lose over €122,000. Briar in Ballymun will lose nearly €150,000. The Finglas Youth Resource Centre will also be hard hit. And there are many, many others that I could list to you. Now, Taoiseach, each of these projects that deals with children, some of them in crisis, some of them in trouble, but deals with them at the front line, represent real value for money. The state gets bang for its buck. For every cent that is invested in our youth and in these projects, there is a direct return to society, to the state and to the Exchequer. The scale of these cuts as proposed will be literally devastating for youth projects across the state and here in Dublin. So, Taoiseach, let me put it to you now. What about your much heralded commitment to valuing children, childhood and youth? What of the commitments of your government to these community and to these children? And what, Taoiseach, are you going to do about these cuts? The Minister is set to sign off on them next week. Will you intervene to stop her?
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Well, first of all, this government does value children and childhood. This is the first government that has a dedicated department of children and youth, headed by a minister at the Cabinet. This is the government that delivered on a commitment that had been spoken about for 20 years to enshrine the rights of children in our constitution. We advanced that and we took that forward. This government spends a considerable sum of money in the delivery of youth services. The way in which those youth services are delivered are through the VECs, through youth organisations, through the various youth bodies and youth services that are organised throughout the country. In the course of time, the demand for services, the numbers of young people using them, the numbers involved, they vary from time to time. And therefore, from time to time, the amount that is spent in an individual service may go up and may go down. I know that the Minister for Youth and Children has an ongoing dialogue with the providers of youth services, consults with them regularly about what is the best way in which to deploy and use the resources of the state to provide youth services and to ensure that those youth services are working in the interests of the young people for whom they are provided.
Deputy MacDonald.
Well, Taoiseach, the establishment of government departments and changes to the Constitution are only really of any value if they are actioned, if they become a reality and if they inform public policy. So for all of your rhetoric, the truth is that the youth affairs budget has been cut by 10%. And that cut will directly translate itself, for instance, into a 14% cut for the Swan project in the North Wall. This project caters for 350 young people and youth. This project is doing immensely valuable work. And if their work is undermined or disrupted, if services are lost, be very clear, Taoiseach, that we will lose on the double. The children and youth lose the opportunity of the service available to them, but the state loses too. So don't be penny wise and pound foolish on this matter. It mightn't be a big deal for yourself, Tánaiste, that the sum €62,000 which this particular project will lose. It is, after all, only a fraction of your own salary and only a fraction of the disgraceful pensions that so many former politicians are receiving. But just as families with small incomes struggle with a small cut, so too projects with very lean budgets really struggle with any type of cut. Now, I want to put it to you again that these cuts are wrong. I don't believe that you can stand over or defend them. I just don't. So tell us, Tánaiste, will you intervene with the Minister, Francis Fitzgerald? Will you insist that these cutbacks are stopped? And will you and your government insist that the commitments you made to children, to disadvantaged communities, will in fact be honoured?
Thank you.
First of all, when it comes to rhetoric, nobody can take second place to the rhetoric of Sinn Féin. And we've had another example. We've had another example this morning of their father Ted economics, where you take one percentage and you add it to another percentage, and you end up with. Now, can I just say to you that that on the issue of the provision of youth services, the Minister for Youth and Children already has in place a process of discussion and dialogue and consultation with the providers of youth services. And where there is a difficulty in relation to an individual youth service and the resources that are available to them, there is a channel of communication between the service providers and the Minister for Youth and Children. And as I've said, from time to time, because of either changes in population, changes in demand, changes in the range of services that are provided, the allocations to individual services and individual projects may change. But if there is a difficulty with any of that, as I've said, there is a channel of communication between the providers of the youth services and the Minister for Youth and Children. And where service providers have difficulties, they can use that channel of communication and have it discussed. Well, but there's, thank you. Yes, but there is already. I mean, there's no point. There is already. Why intervene where there is a direct channel of communication? And there is a direct channel of communication. And the reason that there is a direct channel of communication is because we have a dedicated Department of Youth and Children which is dealing with this.
Thank you. Deputy Halligan. Thank you. Deputy Halligan.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Tánaiste, figures released this week in my own constituency of Waterford show that home burglaries in the city for January 2013 are up over 30% on the same period last year. Tánaiste, the rising statistic is on a par with figures from around the country. In some areas, the number of home burglaries almost tripled in the last year. And I suspect that, given all the facts and figures, it's much higher. Tánaiste, I'm encountering victims of burglary on a regular basis who all paint a similar picture of the terrible pain and misery that this violation of their private space has caused. And often this horror is revisited when the perpetrator is brought to court, and it's quite often the case spared jail or any sort of sentence. Tánaiste, most often items taken are never returned. Personalised jewellery, items that are close to people's hearts. I was in a house last week where their mother and father had died tragically some months before that, and the jewellery belonging to them was taken. More than likely it'll never be returned. And I witnessed a husband and wife crying in front of me. Many people cry outwardly, and many people cry into their hearts. And the psychological effects on having your home violated cannot be underestimated. It can last forever. But Taoiseach, a point that is frequently underreported is the cost of replacing the items in their home and repairing the damage done by intruders, with many people opting not to claim on insurance policies with fear that their policies would go through the roof, and indeed many people cannot afford insurance policies. Research from Eircom Phone Watch has put the average value of goods stolen in home burglaries at a staggering €1,868, with a colossal expense on people. Taoiseach, my question, and before I come to it very briefly, I believe, and many people believe, that the criminal justice system is failing the victims of burglary. Today, in every city, town, and probably every estate in Ireland, someone's house will be burgled. My question to you is this, Taoiseach. Would you consider bringing forward legislation that forces those found guilty of burglary, regardless of whether or not a community sentence, a custodial sentence, or whatever has been handed down, to repay the costs and the damage that they have done? That each judge in every district court in Ireland would be instructed under legislation that the perpetrator, regardless of their means, that such reparation would be deducted from the guilty party's wages or social welfare payments.
Thank you.
And can I finally say to you, Taoiseach, and I know you would be aware of this, and speaking to other members in the House are aware of it, that it's a crime that's gone unnoticed to the very serious criminal crimes of damage to the person. But this is destroying people's lives all over the country. And there is that fear with people that they are being abandoned and not taken notice of. And can I just finally say, how often have I been in court where an out-of-touch judge, because of some do-gooder, will say kind words about the perpetrator and the victim is left abandoned?
Thank you.
We need to do something about this urgently.
Well, I want to thank Deputy Halligan for raising that question, and I think the issue that he raises is a very serious and a very relevant one. And I want to agree that the burglaries of people's homes cannot be measured just in terms of the actual crime that it is, or indeed in the financial terms of the damage that is done either to the home or the goods that are stolen or interfered with. There is an absolute sense of violation by the victims of home burglaries. The sense that somebody has been around your home, in your bedroom, tampering with your personal belongings, in some cases stealing or damaging things that may not be of huge financial value, but are of enormous sentimental and emotional value to the victims concerned. I think the suggestion that you have made is a very constructive one. I know that the Minister for Justice has a very strong personal view in favour of restorative forms of justice and penalties. And I will bring to his attention what I think is a very worthwhile and very constructive suggestion that you have made here this morning, and I will ask him to have what you have said looked at as a way of dealing with. It can never, of course, I think, repair the sense of violation, the sense of damage that is experienced by somebody whose home has been burgled. But I think that it may be a more pragmatic and a more effective and a more appropriate way of dealing with the perpetrators of home burglaries than perhaps some of the ways that they're being dealt with at the moment.
Thank you. Deputy Halligan.
Thank you, Taoiseach. I'm sure many people throughout the country, and I mean this sincerely, I believe in what you've said to be sincere, will be most comforted by what you have said. I think it will send a clear message out to people that violate people's homes, that there is a price to pay. I would say to you again, and I'm not here to kind of make any direct attacks on the judiciary, but through my political life I've spent a lot of time representing people in court in Waterford City, as have some of my fellow TDs and TDs from around the Dáil here. And people can be taken aback at some of the sentencing procedures carried out by the judiciary. How often has it been where people that have burgled one's homes can be seen walking around the street the next day by the very people whose homes they've broken into. And people are just shocked and bewildered. I know the Gardaí at times can prepare really good cases, and I've been there with guards in district courts, and because some judge is out of touch, there's no sentence applied whatsoever. So the person can go back out and reoffend, and quite often some of the people that are reoffending have reoffended on one occasion 20, 25 times, which is in a local paper in Waterford. So I'm comforted by your response, and I think the people of Ireland will be too, but I hope that over a short period of time to the medium that you will act upon the suggestion that I've made.
Thank you.
Well, yes, I will. As I've said, I will bring your remarks, Deputy, to the attention of the Minister for Justice. And I know that his own views are very much in this space of developing forms of restorative justice. But of course, I think we have to understand that that end of the equation is after the damage has been done. And even where there is financial restoration, even where there's a penalty imposed by the courts, there is still a very strong sense of violation experienced. And of course, if something of sentimental value, it may be the wedding ring that was inherited by somebody from a mother or a grandmother, which can never be replaced. It may not be the financial value of it, it's just the family, the sentimental value of it. And that's why I think we also have to address the issue of home burglaries from the end of preventing them. And this is where I think the work that is being done by Neighbourhood Watch, by Community Gardaí, working with local communities, advising homeowners of the kind of preventative and simple precautionary measures. Not leaving the bathroom window open when you're on your way out because you've forgotten to close it, or whatever it may be. Simple precautionary measures that are taken by householders and on which people can get advice. And of course, there are ways that have been developed by Community Gardaí and by Neighbourhood Watch for identifying and marking personal goods, which will enable the Gardaí to identify who the owners are when somebody is detected. And of course, there is also, I think, the requirement and necessity for a sense of good neighbourhood in communities where people do keep a watch out, and particularly keep a watch out for the homes of people who are living alone and who may be and who may be vulnerable. I think this is a very big issue. I think it is an issue that causes a lot of worry to people. I think the suggestions that you've made this morning are valuable. I think they're constructive, and I will ask the Minister for Justice to have a look.
Thank you. That concludes